Just when you think that things couldn't possibly get any worse for the Liberal Party, their polling hits a 40-year low, at least according to the latest news poll. So let's dig into what's going wrong and what the Liberal Party could potentially do to try to rectify the situation. And of course, if you've got thoughts about it, well, let me know that in the comments below. And of course, if you'd like to support this channel while also picking up some merch, well, check out my store in the link in the description below. I have merch such as mugs and prints and various other things featuring images from around Australia, but also some images of your favourite, or perhaps least favourite politicians, such as Albo giving the infamous thumbs up, or Mark Latham towering over John Howard. I'm adding new designs all the time, so check it out using the link in the description below. But otherwise, let's get back to the Liberals' dire polling. So let's start with what exactly has happened with the news poll. Well, in short, the Liberals' primary vote and two-party preferred vote is terrible. Their primary vote is down at 29%, below Labour's primary vote of 36%. Think about that. The coalition isn't even on par at primary level. That's a catastrophically terrible result. One Nation is sitting at 8% and the Greens at 12%, with Other being a grab-all for all manner of parties, sitting at 15%. In short, the primary vote is catastrophic for the Liberals. But it gets worse. If we look at who might make the better Prime Minister, well, Anthony Albanese somehow is dominating. He's at 52% versus 32% for Susan Lee. So it appears Susan Lee is even less preferred than Peter Dutton was, and Peter Dutton did truly terribly in the 2025 election. Now, to be clear, 16% of voters are uncommitted, but still, Anthony Albanese has more than 50% of people thinking he's a better Prime Minister. And it gets worse when we look at two-party preferred. The ALP is at 57% and the Coalition at 43%. This is the worst result since the news poll started doing polls, all the way back in 1985. In essence, the Coalition is at a 40-year low in their polling. This does not bode well for them if it continues to the next election. But of course, they still have quite a lot of time to try to turn things around, and quite a lot of time for Labour to trip over themselves. If you look at voters' satisfaction with the job performance, well, Anthony Albanese has net satisfaction of 0%, hardly a stellar result. However, not as bad as Peter Dutton before the election or Susan Lee at the moment. She's sitting at 35% job approval and 42% disapproval, i.e. a negative 7% result. In essence, the polling is bad for the Liberal Party. So bad, in fact, it's at a 40-year low. Now, of course, this begs the question of what is going wrong and what could the Liberal Party do to try to turn things around. Now, I think what is going wrong is that the Liberals don't appear to stand for anything at the moment. The Liberal Party should be the party of aspiration. It should be the party of achievement. It should be the party of helping people to get ahead. But they don't really seem to stand for anything. Indeed, Susan Lee had initially introduced her plans with an emphasis on things really akin to identity politics, emphasizing the Liberal Party's problem with female voters and effectively insinuating that maybe quotas, or something akin to quotas, might be on the cards. Now, of course, we can see why she might be saying this, but it really ignores the fundamental problem, which is that the Liberal Party lost its way in terms of messaging and in terms of policy. Its policies and messaging simply didn't really appeal to anyone because people didn't really know what they stood for. And yet if you look at them going into the 2025 election, we can see that they failed to back in the Labour Party lowering the lowest marginal tax rate, something that was truly catastrophically awful as far as policy goes. The Liberal Party should be the party of lower taxes and higher net earnings, not the party of higher taxes. Now, to be clear, the Labour Party has their dismal Division 296, the plan to increase taxes on superannuation. And indeed, if you want to have your say about that, well, they're currently opening submissions to the Productivity Roundtable, so do get your submissions in. I encourage you to make such a submission. However, Labour is clearly the party of seizing people's assets, because that's effectively what Division 296 would involve. With that tax on unrealised gains, it would force people to sell assets to pay their tax bill. I've talked about this in prior videos and I encourage you to check out my prior coverage. But Labour is certainly the party of anti-aspiration. is the party of cutting people down when they become successful. But the Liberal Party failed to articulate that point, which is why we are where we are. In essence, they didn't have a clear message. And indeed, Susan Lee is still failing to articulate that message. Ted O'Brien, who is the deputy leader of the coalition and is also the treasurer, has made some inroads in this respect. I don't think that Ted O'Brien is the most charismatic person in the world, but at least he is going down the right path. In particular, by hiring on Stephen Hamilton as his chief of staff, that's going to make significant gains to the Liberal Party in terms of policy messaging. Stephen Hamilton has excellent policy ideas, particularly as it relates to taxation. He has been a little bit controversial with some prior tweets, where he noted that the optimal level of immigration is infinity. Indeed, he does actually make a valid economic point here. After all, if one properly calibrates immigration, then one is importing people that are positive net present value, i.e. that contribute more to GDP than they take up in tax revenue. Of course, this is premised on the idea that those people can and do work in the main area of expertise. However, Stephen Hamilton did make a valid point. He's also been running the charge against the Labour Party's higher taxes and higher spending, noting that the Labour Party has made the fiscal situation significantly worse since they assumed office. The Liberal Party need to push for lower taxes for them to actually stand for something. They need to push for more individual liberty for them to stand for something. They should not be pushing for more censorship. They should not be pushing for more state control over things like social media. They shouldn't be pushing for the control over so-called misinformation and disinformation, which effectively just amounts to the government censoring people they don't agree with. The Liberal Party actually needs to stand for individual freedom and liberty, and for people taking home more of their own money. This would put them in stark contrast to the Labour Party, which is looking for ever more ways to increase taxes, something that I've talked about several times in the past, and something that Labour appears to be trying to butter people up for with their productivity round table. Indeed, Jim Chalmers has tried to, like I've indicated, seize people's assets through Division 296, which would involve effectively a wealth tax at the incredibly low level of Australian $3 million, effectively equivalent to $2 million US, an insanely low level for something like a wealth tax to kick in. But it appears that Jim Chalmers is considering other forms of taxes, such as increasing taxes on corporations or potentially imposing an inheritance tax. It appears that Jim Chalmers has not seen a tax that he doesn't like. But this, of course, is the cancerous parasite that is Fabian socialism. And it appears we are stuck with this, at least until the next election. Though it doesn't look like the Liberals are going to seize victory at the next election. Indeed, they're doing so badly, they're likely to lose. However, if they can improve things just a little bit, they might be able to take control over the Senate, to stop the Labour Party pushing through more of their bad policies. Nevertheless, that's where the Liberal Party is. It appears they've lost their way because they don't really stand for anything, which has caused their vote to crater. But of course, if you've got any thoughts about Susan Lee and the state of the Liberal Party, well, let me know that in the comments below. And of course, remember, if you want to support this channel, we'll pick up some merch using the link in the description below. And otherwise, hopefully I'll see you next time as well.